Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about two soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games they come from, without getting too bogged down in music theory. Up first this week for R2 Games is 2003's F-Zero GX, the frenetic futuristic racing game with an arcade counterpart, sadly noted as the last console game from a franchise that has been on a long hiatus.
Following that is a racing game starring the characters of Sonic the Hedgehog, with a focus on exploration and a soundtrack that is unfitting yet impressive. 1997's Sonic R.
From Blue Blurs to Blue Falcons! This is a Sega racing episode. Games that, sometimes get lost in the shuffle for, better or for worse reasons, but killer soundtracks, honestly, better than you may remember.
Yeah, very much so. And the internet, on mine specifically, seems to just have a problem with this soundtrack, and I don't get it, because it's good. It's very good.
There are certain comparisons to make with your soundtrack, but we will certainly get to those. It's a great episode here with all these racing games with Sega ties. Anyway, Joe, how are you doing? What are you playing?
I honestly have not been playing a lot. I've been continuing the Somnium Files. I played a little bit more Dicey Dungeons. I haven't actually had a whole lot of time to play video games lately, what with me forcing my brain into stuff, but I did start the first 10 minutes of a game called Moondawn. Are you familiar with this at all?
I am not.
It is a horror game where every texture was drawn in pencil on a white piece of paper and then scanned in, which gives it this incredibly unique art style, aesthetic. It's very, very cool, but I've only played 10 minutes of it, so.
Yeah, I can imagine how that'd be a really neat look. That kind of reminds me of what that David Jaffe drawn in Notebook, was it Drawn to Death?
I think so. I think that was the name. I heard it wasn't very good. So.
No, it wasn't, but it's kind of reminds me of that art style a bit. Interesting. I've been playing more Hades. I really should stop because I hit I got all the duos, I got all the legendaries. I've cranked my heat up to 8 and got the extreme measures Theseus and Minotaur. So I even got Skelly's first present that he offers you when you clear heat 8. So I've been playing it a lot. I even played a little bit of Uncharted 4 at Thief's End to show my fiance, and so that was also neat to show. But that's about it. I need to get to Fantasian. I need to get back to Doom 2016. There are definitely things to play. But in the meantime, let's talk about some composer follow-up news. We've talked about so many composers on this show. It actually gets overwhelming to start looking back at how many individuals we've talked about and try to keep track of their different things that they've been working on in the industry, the different news headlines that pop up in the video game industry over the past week. We start with E3 2021. Back from doxing its attendees and then being canceled during a pandemic, E3 2021 will be an all-digital experience from June 12th to 15th this year. Unsurprisingly, Sony and EA are no-shows from the listed companies who will be attending, but apparently Konami will have some presence.
And they'll definitely announce something that people will like. I mean, I know what they're going to announce because we already know the game exists, and I assume that's what it is, but who knows at this point with them.
Honestly, yeah.
Meanwhile, going back to T. Lopes, who we covered for his work on Sonic Mania just, I think, a couple months ago, he revealed that he composed for Streets of Rage 4's Mr. X Nightmare DLC, which is coming soon, and even had this wonderful little Twitter moment where one of T. Lopes' biggest like idols in the video game music world is Yuzo Koshiro, who we have talked about a lot on this show because he's one of the big ones. And Yuzo Koshiro is, of course, known as the main composer behind most of Streets of Rage. And he had a Twitter exchange with Lopes, and it was awesome. They had this cute little Twitter exchange where Yuzo Koshiro was like, I love what you did. I love these tracks. You did a great job. And it was just nice to see, honestly.
Just adorable. Yeah, like pinch me in response, like the nicest compliment I've ever got. You know, for when we talked about T-Lopes on the show before and how much he looks up to Yuzo Koshiro and playing Streets of Rage. Like, that's so cool to see continue to play out. So just fantastic. The former PlayStation 4 exclusive Erica, which is an interactive live action narrative game that you can either play with a controller or an app on your phone, it's coming to PC via Steam on May 25th. It's notable because a double vinyl of the soundtrack, composed by Austin Wintory, can now be ordered if that's your kind of thing.
That's not the vinyl that's going to break the dam on that one, but I remember that game having a pretty alright soundtrack. I mean, it's Austin Wintory. How can you go wrong there? I think the PC is probably a better place for this game in general.
Yeah, I agree. It'll be good to see it there and give it some extra life. Would a 3 LP Persona 5 Royal vinyl be one to break you? Because that's also available for ordering now.
It would be if it wasn't like $100. That's the... I'm not that far gone yet. Meanwhile, Neo, The World Ends With You, the sequel to The World Ends With You. It has a release date finally. It's coming out July 27th. We still don't know, as far as I'm aware, if it is still Takeharu Ishimoto doing the soundtrack. But I hope it is, because his work in the original The World Ends With You is one of my favorite game soundtracks that there is. It's just unique and cool and good. Oh, I'm so excited for Neo The World Ends With You. Also, on day of recording, the anime started today.
That's right. Well, I mean, still promising to hopefully see a game launch in 2021 in a year of delays from COVID aftershocks. Big report out of Bloomberg today as of time of recording from Jason Schreier, formerly of Kotaku, noting how The Last of Us is reportedly being remastered for PlayStation 5. Came with this big report of talking about how Sony is leaning into blockbusters for games and sequels of those, and maybe not taking a risk on a Days Gone 2 per se, taking Bend Studio and maybe having them work on The Last of Us 2 multiplayer factions, or maybe an Uncharted sequel. What's happening with that Sony San Diego studios? It's just a huge report, but a lot of people are talking about The Last of Us being remastered for PS5. Does it need it after it had a remastered version on PS4 and then even a patch to make it better and run smoother and load quicker on PS5? Some speculation, though. This could be planned with the possibility of cashing in on the upcoming HBO series. But I love the game, but I don't think it needs a remaster per se.
And you can already play the remaster on PS5. Like, I agree. I don't understand why this would be happening. This would be the second remaster of The Last of Us, and I really don't think that it would be worthwhile. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah, it's confusing. I mean, I granted the gameplay did improve, I think, drastically in The Last of Us Part 2, but like, I don't need it done retroactively in The Last of Us. I mean, you still get Gustavo Santaolalla's music, so there's that, hopefully.
Yeah, I guess. Musicians at Capcom have formed a new band called Cap Jams, which is, 1, a fantastic name, and 2, this band includes musicians such as the keyboardist Yasumasa Kitagawa, who we covered in Layton vs. Wright, Professor Layton vs. Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, and a couple of others. I don't think we've covered any of the others. Kitagawa was the only one whose name jumped out at me at the time.
I think one of them seemed familiar, and that's because he worked on Devil May Cry 5, but we didn't profile him. So it's a lot of new blood seemingly there, and I'm guessing this is like their new in-house band. Formerly, Rockmen was kind of that band, but they were featured in a Street Fighter V presentation where they're doing a cover. It was a neat little feature, but I mean, yeah, just seems like some new blood at Capcom with Kitagawa, I believe, who was also in Rockman, kind of carrying over there.
Yeah, just really, really cool. I am interested to see where it goes from here, if we see more of them or not.
Yeah, or is it just kind of, here they are, and they're just kind of going to do their thing. Speaking of doing their thing, Ludwig Forcell is now a freelance composer after he announced that he is leaving Kojima Productions, or at least just did so recently. Had an interesting exchange on Twitter where he's like, big news tomorrow, and then everyone's like, well, is Death Stranding coming to Xbox? And they're like, he said the next day, it's like, if you thought that, you kind of need to check your priorities. So hopefully things work out well for him and he gets more great work.
Why would he be the one that knows if the game's going to Xbox or not? His part of that game is done.
Because it's the whole rumor this week of how Microsoft wants to publish Kojima's next game, and it's madness.
Weird. But I wish him luck with his... I believe he's going freelance, specifically, which a lot of game composers seem to do, and that seems to be the way to go nowadays. So, before we get into the first game, I do actually want to bring up an apology about something that I messed up, like 3 weeks ago on Ikenfell. Ivy Tran, one of the halves of the duo Ivy and Sarashu, who I covered for their work on Ikenfell, I used the wrong pronouns. They are non-binary and they go by they, them pronouns. Therefore, when I was using other pronouns, I was wrong. So I want to sincerely apologize to Ivy Tran for that specifically. And yeah, I'm usually pretty good about that. And I'm a little disappointed in myself that I made that mistake. So.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it's appreciated, and we like to be as accurate as we can for all of you listening out there. But I think more than anything, it's more important that it is something worth correcting, and to put that out there. And proud of you for owning up to it, and hope that everyone knows that is something to identify them in the future. So let's get to our first game this week in our Blue Blur Falcon Sega racing games. Let's talk about F-Zero GX. F-Zero, it's the first time... Oh, sorry, I should say F-Zero.
F-Zero. Hell yeah.
It is the first time that we are highlighting this franchise. Certainly iconic music tracks for the 1990 racing game F-Zero for SNES. I mean, there's Mute City, there's Big Blue, just so many different great tracks for that launch title that used the Mode 7 graphics, which worked on the scaling of 2D sprites to give a 3D gaming impression on the 16-bit Super Nintendo system. Of course, this was followed by 1998's F-Zero X for Nintendo 64. And then for the next game in the franchise, Nintendo licensed the IP to a subsidiary developer of Sega, who had already made 2 games in the Super Monkey Ball franchise at that point for the Nintendo GameCube. Unfortunately, this would be the last time that the F-Zero franchise got a console release. So F-Zero GX released in Japan on July 25th, 2003 for Nintendo GameCube. North America got the game on August 25th, and Europe on October 31st. It is developed by Amusement Vision and published by Nintendo. What is F-Zero GX? It is a racing game known for insanely frenetic speed and tech skill. Like, you have to memorize these tracks. Otherwise, you're going to get flown off. You're going to run into the side. It's just, you're going to have a bad time. Up to 30 competitors race on massive circuits inside plasma-powered machines in an intergalactic Grand Prix, where these tracks include enclosed tubes, cylinders, tricky jumps, and roller coaster-esque paths. Now, each driving machine has an energy meter, which is a measurement of the machine's health, and it's decreased, for example, when the machine hits another racer or the side of the track. The player is usually given the ability to boost after the first lap, which greatly increases the racer's speed for a few seconds, but it also drains their energy. There are pit areas and dash plates that are located at various points around the track for the vehicles to drive over. The former, the pit areas, they're generally purple, and they replenish energy when you drive over them, while the latter gives a little speed boost without using up any energy. Now, the less time you spend in that pit area, of course, the less energy you will regenerate. Courses may also have jump plates, which will launch vehicles into the air, and that will allow you to cut some corners. This is the only F-Zero game with a story mode, and boy, is it a trip, because, Joe, early 2000s GameCube games, you can think, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle that made its way from Dreamcast with Sonic Adventure 2. Just think like bad anime dubs, poor acting, just crazy plots. It's the same thing, but like this English voice acting is apparently the same across all versions.
That's what I like to hear.
It's a weird trip to go like with no experience in this game and like watch some of these cutscenes. And boy, oh boy. So I think Wikipedia could sum it up as best as I could. Black Shadow, who is Captain Falcon's rival, he's fleeing the character Lightning in The Black Bull, while also being pursued by the character Deathborn, who's piloting the Dark Schneider. Deathborn manages to catch up to Black Shadow and forces him to wreck. An injured Black Shadow crawls out of his disabled machine and is grabbed by the neck. Pleading for mercy, Shadow is informed by Deathborn that he will have one final chance to win the F-Zero Grand Prix, and is warned of the price of failure. Deathborn promptly departs, leaving Black Shadow alone on the road. Sometime later, Captain Falcon is roaming the streets of Port Town when he notices a group of racers watching a news broadcast of Black Shadow wreaking havoc. He continues to his hideout, where he hones his driving skills in the Blue Falcon simulation mode. After completing his training, Falcon tunes into a news broadcast and witnesses Black Shadow declaring his intent to win the upcoming Grand Prix. What does Black Shadow have planned for Captain Falcon? Can Falcon win the Grand Prix, as well as every race challenge thrown his way, including a challenge for his soul?
Bum, bum, bum.
Joe, here's where I'll ask you, what are our experiences with F-Zero GX?
I have played F-Zero X a little bit because I own it. But for GX specifically, I've probably played maybe 20, 30 minutes of it ever. And this was a long, long, long time ago. It is one of the games on the list for Smasterpieces, which I'm terrified of.
Oh, God.
I am very scared of getting to F-Zero GX, which might happen within the next, year and a half. But what I do remember from playing it the little bit is that, oh, wow, it took everything in myself to not respond. When you mentioned you lose energy if you hit the side or hit the other racers, you're going to do that. You're going to do that a lot.
Or you're going to go off the side where there are no edges and you're just going to die, lose immediately.
However fast you think this game moves, you're wrong. It moves way faster. So yeah, that's my limited experience with F-Zero GX.
It's more than I have, honestly. I knew so little about this game going into it. I just knew in the past, watching footage of it, and I'm like, no, thank you. I do not need to play a game that is that out of control. And I'm sure for some people who love racing great games, that's their jam. That music pumping through it. Oh man, I can imagine. It's a vibe. It hits you for sure, but not for me, thanks. Learning things like the acting and the cutscenes is just delicious. Some of the tracks that I discovered are also interesting as well. We'll get to those in the Critical 5. But it was also neat to learn about the development history and what goes into F-Zero GX, because Nintendo announced on February 18th, 2002, that an arcade system board under the name of Triforce was being developed in conjunction between Nintendo, Namco, and Sega. See, the idea for this board originated after discussions between Sega and Namco about the capabilities and the cost effectiveness of using the GameCube architecture to make arcade games as well as GameCube games. So about a month later, an announcement from Sega and Nintendo revealed that Sega's subsidiary developer, Amusement Vision, and Nintendo will collaborate to release F-Zero video game titles for the Triforce arcade board and the Nintendo GameCube. The game would end up using a modified version of the engine used in Super Monkey Ball and would be co-produced by Shigeru Miyamoto and Toshihiro Nagoshi. See, at this point, Nagoshi already had titles under his belt such as Daytona USA, Shenmue, Super Monkey Ball. Now, if his name sounds familiar, that's because he is the current Chief Creative Officer at Sega, and he is the General Director at Ryuga Gotoku Studio. So he is responsible for the blossoming of the Yakuza franchise. He's the guy who, if you look back in the day, like he's this game developer, okay. And then he starts developing Yakuza, and he goes hard.
And now he looks like he's in the Yakuza.
Exactly. Nagoshi is amazing. But yeah, wow, what a blast to see that, like, Nagoshi is like, has a big hand in F-Zero GX.
When you mention Nagoshi to Neil Ronahan, a friend of ours from Nintendo World Report, he will almost always say, give RGG Studio the F-Zero license so they can make a Yakuza-style game with starring Captain Falcon. And that sounds awesome, and I want that.
It does sound amazing. That would be so good. So what about that game that's on the Triforce engine? This is where F-Zero AX comes into play. And it's the arcade counterpart, again, using the Triforce engine. It was developed alongside GX and has compatibility with it. Apparently, these arcade cabinets could dispense magnetic stripe cards called an F-Zero license card to keep track of custom machine data, pilot points, and race data that you would gather at the arcade cabinet. Of course, one of those big chairs that you'd sit in and it would kind of move about, like it's one of those kind of racing arcade cabinets. Similarly to GX, players would receive a password after completing a time attack race. You could take that and then enter it on the official F-Zero website's ranking system, because this game was before it being online connected and all that, and you'd add online leaderboards and all that. So you had to manually put in for a online leaderboard on F-Zero's website. You could take your Nintendo GameCube memory card, which had a save file for F-Zero GX on it, and put it into these arcade units to bring over your own customized cars from GX to play in AX. Now, 10 of GX's 41 racers are available immediately in AX. They're like originally AX exclusive. But while they can be unlocked in GX by completing the story levels on the highest difficulty, they could also possibly be unlocked by putting the GX memory card into an AX machine. If you're wondering, AX content apparently could be accessed in GX through using cheat devices, Game Shark, Action Replay, what have you. So in GX, there are 41 playable characters. There are 12 track locations, each with about 3 track patterns. So you have some different varieties. It's just not like in Mario Kart. It's one track, and that's how you work it. So there's different track patterns for these different locations, which is pretty neat. One of these playable characters is James McCloud.
Yeah.
Who is the leader of the flight squad Galaxy Dogs. He drives the little Wyvern, and he returns from F-Zero X. This time, he is even more of a fox-like resemblance with his spiky hair on the ends almost to emulate ears. There is also a Mr. EAD, who is a portly man with a mustache and a power star with eyes on his belt buckle.
And he's named after the studio that makes Mario, or at least made Mario at the time.
That's right, Nintendo EAD, that big developer in the Nintendo ecosystem. There's also a Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald Cup. Let's note that this game was released after Pokemon Ruby. Oh, did I mention it also has a Diamond Cup as well? Almost predicting the future of Pokemon. Just some interesting little trivia facts for you there. F-Zero GX reviewed very well with a Metacritic score average of 89. It is considered one of the best racing games of its time and certainly the best on GameCube. I think a lot of reviewers were noting how GameCube finally gave it the hardware that could do the F-Zero franchise justice, because with F-Zero and F-Zero X in the past, yeah, it was a racing game, but you didn't get the sense of like, it's intense, fast, really skill-based racing. So the 60 frames per second intense action on the GameCube really allowed that to shine. The game was praised for its visuals, its arcade and home connectivity, the longevity, its sharp controls, its tough challenge, and its fleshed out single-player modes. However, the big critique is that it is balls hard.
Yep.
Especially in the story mode, where normal is tough enough, especially when you're dealing with rubber banding AI and some of the endless boosts seemingly that opponents can have. But then there's hard. And then there's also very hard.
So this is the reason why, when I play it for Smash Pieces, our friend Vixie loves F-Zero GX and is way better at it than I will be, I guarantee it. And I believe her plan is to drive up here from Texas to make sure I'm able to get through the game.
Yeah, you may have a tough time on normal. I hope she can help you out there.
I also hope that dearly.
The game was also critiqued for a lack of LAN support. Really? Really? Okay.
Could the GameCube even do LAN?
I mean, I guess wasn't there like a LAN adapter for GameCube or something like that? But even still, like a game with that intense action, that the frame by frame moment, you want that done over LAN play. Okay. All right. F-Zero GX sold 1.5 million copies worldwide, apparently, according to a 2018 interview with Nagoshi. It was named the best GameCube game of August 2003, as well as the best GameCube driving game of 2003 overall by GameSpot, and it was nominated for Console Racing Game of the Year by the Interactive Achievement Awards, which we now know as DICE. If you're wondering, Need for Speed Underground was what beat it that year. The legacy of F-Zero GX. It's all about Captain Falcon! Yes, because an anime called F-Zero GP Legend aired in Japan starting in late 2003, just a few months later, and it is famous for its Falcon Punch sequence, where he punches Black Shadow in the face with the anime OP playing. It is glorious, let's be honest. F-Zero GP Legend also turned into a Game Boy Advance game that was like an adaptation of the anime, and that released in Japan in 2003. North America got the game in 2004. Japan got a sequel to this game on Game Boy Advance called F-Zero Climax. That was in 2004, but again, Japan only, and there's been nothing since of the F-Zero franchise. Just a shame, honestly.
Yeah, we're still overdue for another. God, imagine what they could do on the Switch. Come on. Come on.
Oh my gosh, it would be amazing. And yet the legacy lives on with Captain Falcon in Super Smash Bros., where Port Town, and specifically its Aerodive track format, became a stage that debuted in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Several music tracks from GX also appear in Super Smash Bros. Brawl in their original forms. F-Zero also kind of lives on in a way in Mario Kart 8, with the Mute City and Big Blue tracks that were DLC in that game. You also have the 200cc mode, which is probably the best realization of the speed that we're talking about in F-Zero GX.
Even though, again, it ain't as fast as F-Zero GX.
No, it's not. Just please watch some gameplay sometime if you are unfamiliar with how crazy this game is, honestly. Other games have tried to emulate F-Zero's style. I think the first game that comes to mind is Fast RMX on the Nintendo Switch. But yeah, man, that F-Zero series is on hiatus.
Yeah, it sure is. It's been 2 entire console generations and almost a third entire console generation since the last time there was an F-Zero game. There aren't even any, like the SNES F-Zero isn't even on Nintendo Online, is it?
Oh, I'm not sure. I feel like it might be, right? It should be.
I don't think so.
I mean, come on. Oh my gosh. What a shame. Anyway, let's talk about the composer of F-Zero GX, and the composer that we haven't talked about before on the show is Daiki Kasho. Daiki Kasho was born on November 2nd, 1976 in Tokyo, Japan. He is blood type A. When he talked about his childhood, he says, quote, "In the old days, I was a maniac. Every day, I would put my nose into some kind of trouble." He became interested in music at age 8, and eventually he was invited to join Sony Computer Entertainment by a friend of his, where Daiki Kasho started working on Omega Boost, which is the game for the original PlayStation. He said he edited the song for the opening movie about a month after he joined the company. When it comes to his composing process, he says, quote, "I try to see things from the point of view of the consumers. I'm tripping like that until the game comes out. The song images I make do not appear from my instruments. I imagine everything totally, then I dig into that one flavor." It's an interesting translation, but okay. He seems to be more of a guitarist these days, generally with performing credits on albums. I don't see him necessarily doing too many composition jobs too often. The interview I found notes some of his favorites, which are always just so fun. I particularly remember when we were reviewing and looking up info on Nobuo Uematsu, and we had a similar sort of thing where we're looking up, like, what are his favorite things? So for Daiki Kasho, his favorite food and drink is beef and coffee, respectively. His favorite film is The Exorcist. His favorite TV show is Star Trek: The Next Generation. And his hobbies include observing stray cats.
Okay.
He seems to have gotten married in late 2020, according to his Facebook page that was on his website. And I think you can follow him on Twitter at Daiki_Kasho. It doesn't seem to be too active, but that seems to be there. What is his discography? He is primarily a Gran Turismo composer, where he got his big start with the series through Gran Turismo 3 A-Spec, and then he's done some composing work on 4 and 5, and apparently 6, and there are even some reports that he was spotted at a Hollywood studio with some Polyphony Digital people, so he may be doing some work on the yet-to-be-released Gran Turismo 7. Obviously, he did some work also on Omega Boost, F-Zero GX and AX, as well as the King of Fighters Another Day. I think it was worked on the ending theme for that PS2 game. So when it comes to the historical development research for F-Zero GX, Daiki Kasho composed character themes. There are 2 big albums when the official soundtrack was released, which is amazing one thing for, a Nintendo GameCube game. 2 soundtracks, 2 discs released. One of them is all these character themes, where it's Daiki Kasho doing the composing with some assistance from Alan Bray. And then you have the second disc, which is the track themes, the in-game music, all that stuff. And that was composed by Hidenori Shoji. So yes, the Yakuza composer was working on this soundtrack. And my goodness, listening to some of these songs, you can tell it's Shoji. The Yakuza vibes were already right there. See, but at the time though, Shoji was known for his musical scores in Daytona USA 2 and Fighting Vipers 2, while Kasho had worked on the Gran Turismo series. So it was almost like at the time a music mashup of some of the big racing franchises at the time. What does this soundtrack sound like then? Let's get to the 5 critical tracks for F-Zero GX, and we'll start with Shotgun Kiss, Vegas Palace. And so begins the tracks of, if you are familiar with the Super Smash Bros. Soundtrack, starting with Brawl, you may be like, hey, I know this piece. This plays on that Port Town Aero Dive stage. And you'd be like, yeah, you're right. But this is actually playing in F-Zero GX during Stage 3 of the story mode, where it's like your first big race and where you like really have to pay attention. There's clowns all over the place. It's, it says Vegas Palace, but that's the Japanese name. It was changed to Casino Palace for the North American version for pretty obvious reasons. Don't want to get into a big legal mess with Las Vegas. But yeah, what a cool piece, especially if you like kind of jazzy stuff. It starts with that bass, a little flute that kind of goes into these big brassy riffs. I get the sense that it almost sounds like a Majima battle theme from Yakuza, and you can hear the influence there from Hidenori Shoji.
Oh, 100%. I can hear that for sure. This is not the kind of song you expect to hear in an F-Zero game, just in general, because jazz is not one of the two genres that I associate with F-Zero. It makes it more interesting, because it's not what you would expect, and just, oh man, I love the pace of it, and yeah, it gives me vibes of Customer Creed, specifically.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, when that energy picks up and you're flying on that track, that's gotta be really, really cool. Also, a lot of YouTube comments were noting how apparently the Club Penguin sled racing theme was inspired by this piece.
I'm going to need a citation on that. Yeah, I'm going to need a citation on that, but if it's true, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, but it's definitely a good one to start out, and it's Stage 3 apparently is the point when you play that story mode where it's like, oh no, this is very, very hard, so good luck when you get to that one for Smasher Pieces. In the meantime, we'll get to number 2 on the Critical 5, and this is almost a little bit more of F-Zero GX's vibe. This is Planet Colors, Green Plant. Once again, it's a Brawl theme. This one stands out for sure if you are familiar with Super Smash Bros. And its soundtrack. Those synths just jump out immediately. And yeah, it's backed by rhythm guitar and drums, kind of giving you this rave-like pulse. But the synths are very strong and they really command the action, even when they get to like the lower register in kind of like the verse and with the da 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 da. This is a pretty well-known track. If it moved over to Smash Brothers, that's a pretty good indication, especially for another track that is exclusive to GX.
Yeah, I recognize this song from Brawl specifically is where I first heard it. It actually might be one of my favorite of the F-Zero songs in Smash. Definitely my favorite of the non-arrangements. And it's those synths that just have like this driving pace. Because again, this is the fastest racing game on planet Earth. So it should have a really, really driving pace in each of the songs. And this one has always stood out to me as just a really, really good sort of electronic piece.
And it kind of makes me sad because as much as I don't want to play that game, you know, I want that experience of like this kind of music just pulsing through as you're focused on the most minute direction changes. Oh, it's got to be so cool. And I think why a lot of people fondly remember this soundtrack and why you had to bring it to the show. Let's get to number 3 on the Critical 5, though. It's not a theme that you would have expected, but the name kind of rings a bell. This is Infinite Blue, Big Blue. Man, this is a jam. You know, it's not the rendition of the classic dot, da da, dot, da da, that classic Big Blue theme, but you know what? It's still a pretty hype piece nonetheless. It was like the most viewed track on like a YouTube playlist of the different tracks for listening and for research purposes. So it's one that a lot of people, I guess, must resonate with, and so had to be included here. It's Big Blue. Even if it's a unique take on it, I get the feeling of like Tatsunoko versus Capcom vibes, where, you know, Sega and Nintendo, it's like nothing to do with Capcom, but I could totally hear this being played in a fighting game.
I went into this episode thinking that Planet Colors was going to stay my favorite song on this Critical 5, and then this song came in and blew it away. This song is so cool. Yes, I do very much like the original classic Big Blue theme. I think it's fantastic. And now we have a new best version of that from Mario Kart, so we're fine. But yeah, no, this is an amazing track.
I feel like there are also covers of Mute City and Big Blue and some other classic F-Zero themes on this album, but you know, we got to save those for when we eventually go back and cover the original F-Zero, so we're not going to kill that vibe here. Let's get now to number 4 on the Critical 5, and this is Paper Engine, Outer Space. This seems to be another fan favorite, but this is notable because it is an AX track. So you could play it in the arcade as part of an AX circuit, if you will, as far as like the single player goes. So some people with very fond memories of this one, but not necessarily the most accessible in GX. As far as the music goes, more rave vibes. You got the pumping bass going, which again really helps that frenetic energy, and even some vocal samples mixed in here. It gives it a little bit of a unique flair, but had to get an AX track in here to kind of show that some love, because the GX and AX tracks are all part of that CD album package.
This feels like a song that should be thrown behind like a sci-fi action scene.
Yeah.
Which is, it like, I'd watch that. I'd listen to that. This song is really good.
It is really good. It's just a cool one that hit me immediately. I'm like, well, I got to put it in here somewhere. And a lot of other people seem to like it as well. But I have to wrap it up with a character theme. Got to get some love for Daiki Kasho's work in there. And who else's character theme am I going to put on the Critical 5 but Captain Falcon's theme? When I think of you, I see no fear, feel no pain. Forever he will be my hero. Everything he knows the way, not just only for tonight. And now boy, talk about something completely different. So again, this was composed by Daiki Kasho, whereas the previous tracks were composed by Hidenori Shoji. Lyrics and vocals on this one are done by Alan Bray. Man, you want a track that makes Captain Falcon sound like a Jesus-like figure. You get that Christian rock vibe. I almost think of like Switchfoot. If you want an early 2000s throwback for like what I think this sounds like. I mean, but when you're talking about lyrics in the chorus that says, "Forever he will be my hero." Okay, Captain Falcon is Jesus. Got it. Thank you.
That or Captain Falcon is singing and he's really into Jesus himself.
Right. I know, you get based on the lyrics, it feels like, there's someone else revering Captain Douglas J. Falcon. I don't know. It's a getting Kasho's work in there. It's a character theme. It's gotta be Captain Falcon.
It's some Crush 40 energy right there for sure.
It's got that butt rock vibe. Absolutely. Let's get to some tracks on the cutting room floor. For me, I've got a couple. This one is Feel Our Pain, Firefield. Who let Hidenori Shoji just get cranked up to 11? Honestly, with the electric guitars and just like this metal, but also like this synth just kind of twisting in the background to distort it a little bit. You know what? You hear this and like, I can see how this guy composed especially boss themes in Yakuza 0. Absolutely. This kind of leans a little more on the hard metal, which makes sense. It's Firefield. You got some like volcanic fire elements going on in the track. A lot of red, orange color theming. But man, it's so cool. But yeah, definitely got that Yakuza boss vibe.
Oh yeah, this is the most Yakuza song on the entire soundtrack. And also another song that actually beat out Planet Colors in my hierarchy. Because wow, this song is really, really cool. I don't know when I turned into this person that really likes like electronic and metal fusion songs, but it happened at some point within the last 5 years. And so this song is right up my alley. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's just Shoji unleashed, honestly. But let's get to the other track on the cutting room floor. And this one is Brain Cleaner Replay. Yep, it's the other one from Super Smash Bros. Brawl. And for just a replay track that you're not going to hear while driving, oh, it's such a cool one. It's a little repetitive, and it's some like little vocal samples in there. But wow, it jams. And, for some people in the YouTube comments, they're like, I can't believe this is a replay track, but like, this is one of my favorites. And yeah, for us, for coming from Super Smash Brothers, and for this one to jump out, I'm like, oh yeah, I know this one. It's got to go on here, but at least here on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, I also recognized it from Smash. Would never have guessed that it's just for the replay feature, but okay.
They went hard, that's for sure. So what will I never forget about F-Zero GX? Well, boy, I'll never forget looking at it for the first time, because that is a trip. Again, go watch some gameplay. If you're like, it can't be that fast. It can't be that crazy. Oh, no. No, it is this difficult for a reason. So yeah, I pity you, Joe, when you get to that, when you hit your 2003 games for Smasherpieces.
Yeah, I think it's the one I'm most terrified of right now, in terms of upcoming. It's that and Mario Sunshine, I think, are the two that they build up a sense of dread in me when I think about their upcoming nature.
In the meantime, though, before you talk about your next game, let's talk about transitioning with a fan cover or fan remix of one of these songs from F-Zero GX. Found a glam metal cover of Green Plant, or Planet Colors, from Chip Roberts on YouTube. Does some cool stuff with the synths and the guitars, and I like it a lot. Hopefully you do too. We'll be right back.
Alright, our next game is one that's not looked so fondly upon, for multiple reasons, but we'll get into that in a minute, I guess. We're going to talk about Sonic R. So Sonic R was originally released for the Sega Saturn on November 18th, 1997 in North America, November 21st in the PAL regions, and December 4th in Japan. It would also be released on PC in 1998. And then it would come to both GameCube and PS2 as part of the Sonic Gems collection in 2005. Interestingly, if you're like me and thinking Sonic Gems collection didn't come out on PS2, that's because it didn't come out on PS2 in America. It came out in Europe and Japan only, apparently. Very, very odd. So, it is, apparently, the only original Sonic game to be released on the Sega Saturn. Any other Sonic games that hit that system were ports from other earlier Sega hardware. That is insane to me. That does not compute.
Like, what about 3D Blast? What was that originally on?
That was I believe a Mega Drive game? I think. It came to Saturn, but it did not originate on Saturn.
Yeah, I remember seeing it on Saturn. There is a Mega Drive Genesis version. What?
Yeah, I also did not know that. That's insane, right?
Wow.
Like, they had a whole generation of their own console that they only made one new Sonic game for.
Sorry, I should note for our European listeners, we're talking about Sonic 3D Flicky's Island.
Oh, right. I forgot. That's what it's called in Europe. Oh, God bless. So, it was developed by Traveler's Tales, who would later go on to become the developers behind the Lego games, if that sounds familiar to you. They still make them today. And Sonic Team, who, of course, as we all know, was later cursed by a witch, and now Sonic is. And of course, the game was published by Sega. So Sonic R is a racing game starring the various characters of Sonic the Hedgehog. In fact, the roster includes Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy Rose in a car that has to be pointed out. And also she's based on her Sonic CD character because Adventure hadn't happened to make her really annoying yet. It's okay, they fixed her in Sonic Boom. She's really good at Sonic Boom. Also, Dr. Robotnik, Metal Sonic, the Tails doll, Metal Knuckles, and Robotnik's assistant, the Egg Robo, as well as the final unlockable character being Super Sonic. The game is largely compared to Mario Kart, and, I guess that makes sense, I suppose. I mean, it has item panels that you can pass that will give you access to some of the franchise's iconic power-ups, like I think speed shoes are in there. I know the bubble shield is on there for sure, and the magnet shield and all that. But that's kind of where the similarities end, because you might notice that I specifically said that Amy, and also I believe Robotnik and Egg Robo as well, are in vehicles because all the rest of the characters are running because it's a Sonic game. Why does Sonic need a car? Obviously now he has he has 3 kart racers where he's driving a car, but let's ignore that for now. And that's really the major difference. It has more of a focus on exploration, which is really weird to hear when you're talking about a racing game. And Also some platforming. There are only 5 tracks to play on, and we'll get to why in a little bit, but like less than half of F-Zero's. You can also get collectibles along the tracks, being Sonic tokens or the Chaos Emeralds, and these can allow you to unlock certain things like hidden characters. I believe Robotnik and any of the characters I listed after that are unlockable. You have to do certain challenges to gain access to them. There are also like special modes that you can play. There's, the traditional time trials, but I found out that there's also a tag mode where one player chases the rest of the players around the track, which seems kind of neat. I like that idea. I doubt it is well done, but I like that idea. Did you know this game has a story?
Why not? Okay.
The story, according to Wikipedia, is as follows. Sonic and Tails are about to take a holiday when Tails notices an advertisement for a World Grand Prix. While not initially interested, Sonic notices that Dr. Robotnik is also participating in the race, which persuades him to change his mind and enter the race. It is revealed that Robotnik has recently learned of the whereabouts of the rare and powerful Chaos Emeralds, with which he aspires to enslave the world, and the World Grand Prix is actually a trap used to distract Sonic. Knuckles and Amy overhear of Robotnik's plan and decide to compete. Together, the 4 must balance both winning races and obtaining the Chaos Emeralds to keep them out of Robotnik's reach. Don't know why they decided the best way to stop Robotnik was to just join in the race that he was using as and instead of telling Sonic or trying to stop themselves. I mean, Knuckles could easily take whatever. It's fine. Don't worry about it. That's the story of Sonic R. So, Peter, here's where I will ask you, what are your experiences with Sonic R?
So I mentioned how I've seen gameplay of F-Zero GX, and it just looks like not my thing. It looks so intense and uncontrollable. This is uncontrollable on the opposite side of the spectrum in like a bad way. Just like I don't care to play it. But the music, though. The music.
Mm-hmm. So we actually have 2 friends that will swear up and down that this is one of the best racing games ever made. That is not a joke. And non-ironically, Matt and Ben both swear by this game. Matt specifically refers to this as like fantastic game. They learned how to enjoy it, I guess, and I ain't going to take that away from them. I have never touched Sonic R. I have seen footage of Sonic R, and I've heard some of the memes about Sonic R's soundtrack. I don't really have any desire to go play Sonic R, but that soundtrack, though. That soundtrack. So, let's talk about the development of Sonic R. In 1996, Traveler's Tales had just finished collaborating with Sonic Team for the Genesis title, Sonic 3D Blast, which they also made, I guess. After that successful project, Sega approached Traveler's Tales again with the idea of making a racing game this time. And they agreed, because, wouldn't you know it, not only had Traveler's Tales been working on their own 3D graphics engine, but they also just happened to be working on a Formula 1 game. So, with that in mind, the graphics engine began to be specialized for the upcoming Sonic Racer, which, before that, it didn't really have a project that was associated with it. And then the Formula 1 game was used as a starting point for Sonic R. Though it was not called Sonic R at the start. Its original working title was Sonic TT, with TT standing for Tourist Trophy. Some nice sibilance there.
But also, you gotta change it when it says TT.
Yeah. It was officially announced as Phase 2 of Project Sonic. I have no idea what that means. Apparently, the first phase of Project Sonic was Sonic Jam, which was a collection of the first 4 games, Sonic 1 through Sonic and Knuckles, being ported to the Saturn. I've never heard of Project Sonic.
Nope.
So the tracks were designed by Sonic Team, and Traveler's Tales was the one in charge of implementing and programming said tracks. They are all thematically based on previous levels in the franchise, most notably Green Hill Zone, Chemical Plant Zone, Casino Nights Zone, but this is only thematic, I guess, quote unquote, canonically. These are different locations.
Okay.
This is also the reason why tracks have multiple secrets and places to explore, because they wanted it to feel more like a traditional Sonic level, which, again, is kind of a weird idea for a racing game, but you know what? It's unique, and I definitely applaud that, I suppose. But Sonic R had a tumultuous development, and that's why there are only 5 tracks. The game was developed on an extremely tight schedule. You may remember that I said that Sonic 3D Blast came out in 1996. Remember that this game came out in 1997.
Yeah, woof.
So they pumped this out in less than a year. One of the biggest challenges in development was implementing the split-screen multiplayer, apparently, with programmer John Burton claiming that the main problem was making sure it wasn't very easy for players to cheat. I assume that means like screen watching or something. I don't 100% get what that means, but it drove them to make shortcuts more challenging to access, as well as adding a penalty of some kind if they failed to access said shortcut. Burton also claimed that none of the major competitors to the Saturn would have been able to run Sonic R due to the fact that the game was so heavily focused on taking full advantage of the Saturn's hardware. So at that point, he was basically saying this game could not run on a PlayStation, this game could not run on the Nintendo 64. The Saturn is where it has to be. Though, and I found this fascinating, even though I really don't 100% know what it means, he says that in order to implement the environments in the game, he basically programmed a software version of the hardware that the PlayStation 1 used to render its graphics.
What?
And I don't know what that means, but it sounds impressive. So another reason the game's development was a little bit rocky is because Traveler's Tales and Sonic Team were located in 2 entirely different countries and therefore 2 majorly different time zones. Traveler's Tales was in the UK, and Sonic Team is obviously in Japan. So in order to make sure this communication went as smooth as it possibly could, a producer from Sega of Europe named Katz Sato was assigned to specifically be the guy that made communication between the 2 studios happen. And at some point, something must have gone really wrong because due to scheduling and technical issues, Sato apparently began to change the game's overall design, which was something that producer Yuji Naka, the head producer and currently a very newsworthy person for not the best reasons, he didn't take kindly to these changes, and apparently the 2 had such a large dispute that Sato had himself removed from Sonic R's credits. Like, not Yuji Naka did it, Sato did it. That is nuts. So after this, Hirokazu Yasuhara of Sonic Team was sent to the UK to help fine-tune the game because they literally did not have time for slow communication anymore. The game had to be done. And how much did it need to be done? Well, the first demo of Sonic R was shown off at E3 1997, about half a year before its release. I always forget, E3 1997 was in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, interesting.
I'm just so used to hearing about it being in LA that was kind of a shock to me. But this build, apparently, according to the devs, was approximately 40% complete, but looking back, apparently it is almost identical to the finished product, with a few minor tweaks here and there, but for the most part, they said 40%, but it was basically done at that point. So Sonic R received mixed reviews, not entirely negative upon release, though since then, as the years have gone by, people have really soured on it, and criticism has turned into the negative. It has a 69 on game rankings. Nice. But the game was praised for its visuals, which, I mean, at the time, yeah, I think they were high end at the time. They don't look great now, but you know, you gotta give that the context of this game came out in 1997 when Final Fantasy VII was a nice looking game. So one review even claimed that the track Radiant Emerald, which apparently includes a bunch of track pieces made of translucent multicolored tiles, they called it superior to Mario Kart 64's Rainbow Road. One of those two tracks is still beloved and well known. I'll let you take a guess as to which one that is. Critics also apparently really enjoyed the level design. There were a lot of them commenting that the tracks were fun to navigate and explore, which, you know, not something you usually hear for a racing game, but it was apparently fun at the time, though there was a lot of criticism aimed at the game's controls, which many critics saw as clunky and inaccurate, except it should be noted, and this is my favorite blurb from this whole thing, is that while most critics agreed that the controls were inaccurate in certain ways, none of them said they were unresponsive. In fact, some of the criticisms were that they were somehow too responsive, with the reviewer at GamePro stating, at high speeds, it's nearly impossible to run in a straight line. That is beautiful. Game Trailers ranked it as the second worst Sonic game of all time, only being beaten out by Sonic 06. I assume this was before Sonic Boom, Rise of Lyric came out. But it's not all bad, because Sonic R is considered the reason why fans began requesting more racing games within the Sonic franchise. Something that Sega has embraced very hard in recent times. You've got 2006's Sonic Riders, you've got 2008's Sonic Riders Zero Gravity, 2010's Kinect exclusive Sonic Free Riders, and as I alluded to earlier, there are now 3 Sonic and Sega themed kart racers that put Sonic in a car because he needs that nerf, I guess. But those all are generally considered to exist specifically because of Sonic R. Now, the man behind the soundtrack of Sonic R, which I think is fantastic, but let's talk about the person behind it first. His name is Richard Jacques. He was born on April 2nd, 1973 in, and I hope I say these right, Leamington Spa, Warwickshire, United Kingdom. He says that he had an interest in music from an early age, and that's, you know, typical for people that we cover on this show a lot. But he was rewarded a scholarship to study at the Royal Academy of Music in London as a kid, as an early teenager, I believe, and there he focused on trombone and piano. However, while he was there, he started to gain an interest in composition in various different genres of music. From there, he would go on to attend Wells Cathedral School at age 16, and it was there that he started adding percussion to his specialties. He graduated with a Bachelor's of Arts in Music from the Colchester Institute and University of Essex in 1994, after which he immediately got hired as an in-house composer for Sega of Europe. His most well-known work during that time was the Dreamcast title Headhunter in 2001. I was sort of familiar with Headhunter because, and this is the dumbest reason, one of the songs from that game is often featured as like the triumphant moment music in the Japanese show Game Center CX.
Oh, interesting.
But I did not know until doing research for this episode that Headhunter is apparently the first soundtrack to be recorded at the famous Abbey Road Studios, the first game soundtrack at least, using a live orchestra, which was specifically the London Session Orchestra.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, I had no idea, but that's super neat. He's since scored a number of games for a variety of development houses, and he has since won numerous awards for his work. Very shortly after Headhunter, he left Sega to go freelance, but he still, as you'll notice from his discography, is very heavily associated with Sega still. He opened a new studio in London around 2011 and has worked on music for various TV shows and even a feature animated film, though the name did not jump out to me. Most recently, in 2018, he received the Lifetime Achievement Award from GANG, which is the Game Audio Network Guild. You can follow him on Twitter at Richard_Jacques. That's JACQUES. In terms of his discography, one of his first major projects was Daytona USA Championship Circuit Edition, alongside 3 other composers, one of whom was Jun Sonoe. He did the music for the Saturn version of Sonic 3D Blast. Of course, he did the music for Sonic R. He is credited as one of the artists that worked on Jet Set Radio and Jet Set Radio Future. Obviously, as I mentioned before, Headhunter, but he also came back to do the sequel, Headhunter Redemption. He did music for Outrun 2 and Outrun 2006, iToy Play 2 and 3, which that's a name I didn't expect to pop up today. The video game adaptation of Starship Troopers. He is credited as one of the artists behind Mass Effect, which I believe we mentioned way back in the day when we covered Mass Effect.
We sure did. Episode 4.
Yeah, long time ago. He did music for Sega Superstars Tennis. Unfortunately, he is one of the artists that worked on Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood. But it's okay, because he got to work on good Sonic soundtracks after that, because he is credited on Sonic and the Black Knight. James Bond 007 Bloodstone, which is a soundtrack that he was actually nominated for a BAFTA for. He is credited on Sonic Generations, Sonic Boom, Rise of Lyric, and Shattered Crystal, and Fire and Ice, Sonic Forces, and he contributed to Team Sonic Racing most recently, as far as I can tell. So he is still, like I said, very closely associated with Sega. He still works with them very often. You mentioned that there was a comparison that could be made with my game's soundtrack to another soundtrack we have covered in the past, and that is when we talked about Marvel vs. Capcom 2 last year. You mentioned that a lot of reviews sort of gave a lot of flack to the soundtrack because it just, to them, it didn't feel like it fit a fighting game. Well, this is another game like that. This soundtrack gets a whole lot of flack, but I'm here to tell you that it's actually incredible. Like, it's an incredible soundtrack. GameSpot, when they reviewed Sonic Gems Collection, called it a, quote, laughably bad soundtrack, and I don't know if we were listening to the same soundtrack, Mr. GameSpot reviewer, because this soundtrack is awesome. It's so good. Better than it has any right to be. So the soundtrack, as you'll hear in a bit, heavily features vocals by British singer T.J. Davis, and Jacques' main goal with the lyrics was to have them complement the on-screen action and tone as well as they could, but he also wanted to make sure the music would be enjoyable for hearing on loop during a race. And he considers this soundtrack to be one of the most challenging ones he has ever worked on, specifically for this reason. The entire soundtrack, this is amazing. The whole thing was recorded and mastered in 2 weeks.
Oh, stop it.
With 1 week spent recording and the second week doing everything else. That's mixing, mastering, everything.
Oh my goodness.
That is an insane turnaround time. Even for a soundtrack this short. Wow. The game apparently has 2 versions of every track. There is a vocal version and an instrumental version because players have the option to turn off the vocals if they want. And if you do this, you're wrong. And also, you're a coward. And no, I will not step down from that hill.
Yeah, honestly, it's meant to be like, I think of it as like a Europop vocal album. And yeah. I think you're right. The Marvel vs. Capcom 2 comparison is very fair. Great music on its own. Is it paired the best? Probably not. But if we're looking at just the songs, there's some jams here.
Yeah, like, does it sound like an 80s workout video all the way through? Yeah, sure. Yeah, I agree. Does that necessarily fit with a racing game? No, I will give you that one. It does not. But
it's not laughably bad.
Yeah, it's really, really good, though, on its own. Like, the soundtrack is way better than this game honestly seems to have deserved. But don't take my word for it. Let's listen to it with our Critical 5, the first of which is Resort Island, Can You Feel the Sunshine? If you've heard any song on this soundtrack, this is one of the 2 possibilities I assume you've probably heard at some point. Mm-hmm. Because this is the one that is used to say, man, hear how weird and bad this soundtrack is? But I'm here to tell you that this song is actually very good. Like, yeah, it's corny. It's really, really corny. But it, like the rest of the soundtrack, it has this super, super positive energy to it that I just really appreciate. And apparently, one of the small... Remember when I said that the E3 demo was 40% done, except it looked identical to the finished project, minus a couple of tweaks? One of them was apparently they added the ability to play this track at sunset, specifically because of this song. So that's cool.
I mean, yeah, it is a very positive song. And you're right. Like, you've probably heard this song before if you know anything about Sonic R. But yeah, wow, what an infectious energy to it. And I think it's really similar in that regard to F-Zero GX's soundtrack. Like, you feel the boom, 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 like you go. Like, it's got that energy, and it's really infectious.
And you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, the overall tone of this entire soundtrack reminds me of the tone of, like, Katamari.
Yeah.
Where it's just all... It's a good mood soundtrack, I guess, is what I would call it.
There's no danger, evil motifs or anything going on, especially when you're trying to prevent Robotnik from getting the master. No, everything's, like, happy. Good.
Yeah.
You're my friend. Let's go. Everything's great.
It feels good to listen to. And let's keep that rolling with critical track number 2, Regal Ruin, Back in Time.
So take me back in time to another world, then you can be mine. We don't have to worry when you're by my side. There's nothing I don't know, there's nothing to decide apart from where we want to go.
I feel like this song reminds me of something, but I cannot for the life of me figure out what it is. That being said, though, this song is very, very good, and it feels like it should be the credits song to an old anime, like from the 80s.
Or from a Back to the Future movie.
Yeah, it could be that too, honestly. But it's still got more of those really, really positive vibes, and I dig this song a lot.
I was surprised how many tracks I actually knew from the soundtrack, because I figured I only knew a couple. This one I didn't know, but like the chords in here are just really pleasing to listen to, and it's a great mix. The fact that it was done in such a quick, short order blows my mind because it sounds so good.
Yeah. It's but the next track though, that's where it's at. My favorite track in the game is Critical Track number 3, Reactive Factory, Work It Out.
Just you and me and everybody. Work it out, think about it. Work it out, talk about it. Work it out, make it happen. Let's work it out. We've got to make it real. We've got to make it real. We've got to make it real. We've got to make it real.
Hey, this song's really hype. Like, really, really hype. Also, the most, like, 80s synth pop song possible. I could hear this song I could hear the song in Initial D.
Yeah, and it's got like workout vibes. I know this saying work it out, but you're like, all right, and step, and 2.
Yeah.
and step. Like,
This is specifically the one where I'm like, oh, this is an 80s exercise video for sure.
yeah, but I mean, it's incredible. This is one where like I had heard this song before. I never equated it to Sonic R. How did I never do that? Because it's the same vocalist. It's the same positive energy, but no, clearly it had to be. So like I was delighted to come across this one. I'm like, oh yeah, of course.
I had never heard it before now.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Can You Feel the Sunshine and a future Critical Track were the only songs I had ever heard before looking into this soundtrack. And I'm glad I got to.
For me, it was this one and one on Your Cutting Room Floor that I'd heard before, but never equated the two.
But yeah, I think this is my favorite song on the soundtrack, and also probably one of the only ones that actually fits the genre of the game. Like this sounds like a racing game song, so you know, they got one, but that's about it. For Critical Track number 4, I mean, it's better than Mario Kart 64's Rainbow Road in every way, because Critical Track number 4 is Radiant Emerald, Diamond in the Sky.
'Cause now I know that we'll never be apart. You're the one that makes me feel so high. Just like the diamonds in the sky. I never want to hear you say goodbye. 'Cause you're my diamond in the sky. You're the one that makes me feel so high. Just like the diamonds in the sky. I never want to hear you say goodbye. 'Cause you're my diamond in the sky.
Look, all I'm saying is that Mario Kart 64's Rainbow Road didn't have vocals, and therefore, automatically, this track wins. Just kidding. No. But this song is really good, though. I think this is one of my favorites in terms of, like, the positive feeling to it. With the, 'cause you're my diamond in the sky. It feels so good. This one's Katamari as hell, though.
Oh yeah, for sure. Though I probably would have had it on my cutting room floor if I had to pick, because there's something in this piece that bothers me, and it feels like in each musical phrase there's a note that's flat. The da 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 da. Like, I don't know if you like hear it. Like, there's a note that just feels like not entirely on key. It bothers me. I don't know. Maybe I'm being picky, but yes, diamond in the sky.
I love it. But yeah, I could hear this being in a Katamari game for sure. Let Richard Jacques score a Katamari game. With Yu Miyake, because Yu Miyake has to be there too. For Critical Track number 5, this is, if you haven't heard Can You Feel the Sunshine, you've heard this one. Because it is Super Sonic Racing.
Just feel the pulse
This song is awesome. It's so good. It was also apparently the first song to be written for the game. Specifically, it was written to be used in the game's official reveal at E3. And this song is very important to this game's history and the soundtrack's history, because apparently the original plan was for this to be the only song in the game that used Davis's vocals. But after recording, Yuji Naka was so impressed with her performance that he requested she be a part of the entire soundtrack. Which, there you go, Yuji Naka. You got one. You got one good decision.
Jeez, Yuji Naka, why don't you bring her back for the musical sections in Balan Wonderworld?
Or, better yet, don't make Balan Wonderworld. And this song shows up in a lot of things. For instance, it made it into Smash, like in its original form, which is the first place that I ever heard this song. It's so cool. Also in Generations, there's a Cash Cash remix of Supersonic Racing, and it's so good. But, man, this is a very, very close second place favorite song, because damn, it's just super good.
It's such a good piece. You're right. I mean, even some of the lyrics are a little corny. So stay on track and don't look back.
Just feel the pace. Come on now, race.
Yeah. So, I also heard this in Smash for the first time, and like, it's just stuck with me for years. And I think it's the foundation. If you ever know anything about this soundtrack, it's this. But if you're hearing this for the first time, congratulations. Enjoy.
Yeah, congratulations on hearing one of the best soundtracks to come off of the Sega Saturn. I don't know any other Sega Saturn soundtracks. So, in terms of tracks on the cutting room floor, I mean, there are only 3 tracks left, so you have one and hit me with it.
Yeah, there was only one to choose from, and it's kind of just a little ditty of a piece, but it's the options screen. And just, it's so cool with the little vibe it's got going on with the bass and the keyboards and these almost like muted guitar strings. Like, oh man, just a little simple loop and it's a jam. I like it a lot.
Good bass part there.
Oh yeah.
Also, basically the only song that's not a jingle on the soundtrack that does not feature TJ Davis's vocals, which is why it didn't end up on my cutting room floor, but I'm glad we brought it because, again, I mean, it rounds it out, shows the whole thing.
Yeah, it's like the only song literally left.
Yeah. And speaking of, let's get into my 2 cutting room floor tracks. The first one being Radical City, Living in the City. You know you gotta survive. I really, really like TJ Davis's voice. She does so good on this whole soundtrack. I want every single song that she sang to be in this episode because they're all bangers.
Absolutely. I had heard this one before from the YouTuber Video Game Donkey. I think he used it in like an outro slate that he did. And it was talking about, I can't remember what the video was, but he mixed it with this kind of computer-like voice saying, Assassin's Creed is a good franchise. Assassin's Creed is a good franchise. And like, ever since listening to these clips, I'm like, that's now in my head forever. Thank you, Donkey.
This was another song that I had never heard beforehand, but now that you mention it, I think I do kind of remember that. Didn't put 2 and 2 together. The other song on the cutting room floor for me is number 1.
You know that you're the only one. All I need is you, for always and forever. All you need is me. Remember when I said all we need is love for us to be together.
This is the credits. It's just, it's another majorly positive song, and I really, really dig it. Again, G.J. Davis did so well in this whole thing. It's so good.
And you could also imagine this as like a Mariah Carey backing track. Like, this feels pushing into the 90s instead of 80s. It's got that feeling to it. But yeah, round it out. It's a good addition.
Yeah. So all I never forget about Sonic R. I mean, it's just the soundtrack. Soundtrack is amazing. And so many people give it so much flack that it doesn't deserve. It's just super good. That is not to say the game is good. I've never played it. Don't really want to, but I'm glad it exists. And I'm glad this soundtrack exists because it is absolutely fantastic. Probably, and this is a high bar, I know, might be one of my favorite Sonic soundtracks of all time.
Whoa!
Which is, again, a high bar.
Didn't expect that one. No, it's great, but wow, strong fighting words. I would have almost expected this to be like one of our April Fool's episode, like games to play, because like it's definitely worth covering. And I think you're right, it is up there with Marvel vs. Capcom 2 as great and solid on its own, not paired specifically well with its game, but still worth covering nonetheless. And when it comes to these Blue Blur, Blue Falcon, Sega racing games this week on Original Soundchat, you know what? That intense beat and pace. It's so good. So thank you so much for listening this week. That'll do it for us. You can find me on Twitter at Pete Speakeasy. Joe is over at The Dobaga. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, but it's that MP3 podcast version that you want, hosted by Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. You can find that MP3 podcast version of Original Soundchat and Joe's other podcasts, Masterpieces, on podcast services all around the globe. Wherever you subscribe, rate, all that good stuff, get your podcasts there. And then you can even find us on Spotify with our podcast feed of episodes, but we also have a Spotify playlist where if songs from the past and what we just talked about, if we talk about on the show, it gets added to Spotify. If it's on Spotify, it gets added to that big old playlist. Joe, what is being added this week?
So obviously F-Zero being a property owned by Nintendo, not on there because Nintendo still has not hit that part of the world, I guess. But Sonic R, I'm really shocked, is. So that'll be added to the playlist.
Excellent. In the meantime, we're working on a new merch site for you, and we're also working on some more bonus tracks. So keep posted when we have updates for those. Joe, who are we talking about next week?
I'm very excited for next week because I will be talking about Emmy Evans.
I, meanwhile, will be talking about Tommy Tallarico. Oh, it should be a very good episode indeed. Joe, let's play us out.
So I had to find a cover of either Work It Out or Supersonic Racing, and it ended up being a cover of Work It Out that is really, really good. It is by YouTuber Iris Pamela Calvo. That's IRIS-PAMELACALVO. She did a vocal cover of Work It Out featuring alongside somebody named GJ Robitnik, which is 10 out of 10 name. And yeah, she absolutely kills it. So please enjoy that.
Get your workout on, everybody. Thanks so much for listening this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.